Right, it doesn't matter how organised or thorough I try to be when I'm doing these monthly channel updates, I always seem to forget or miss something. And Wednesday's video was no exception. A couple of weeks ago, Motorn Customs asked me to do them a favour on the next update, which I promised I would do, and then I forgot about it completely. The previous reviews that I've done on the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650 regarding a couple of their products, the Union Jack and Classic Cafe Racer pinstripe knee pads for the tank, and the up and over bar risers. They've received a lot of emails apparently from India, from people inquiring as to whether the links that are left in those videos are actually the right links for the product that will fit the Interceptor. That's for both the knee pads and for the up and over risers, and also inquiries as to whether Motorn ship to India. First of all, the links. Uncle Stu would never set you wrong, and if I had made a mistake I would have corrected it. The links in the video description to both those videos are the links to the correct product for the Interceptor. Also, Motorn ship to just about anywhere in the world, including India, so that's no problem at all. I think reading between the lines, Motorn are quite pleased to be getting these emails, but they are concerned that the uncertainty is causing customers a bit of inconvenience with the delays with emails, etc. So they asked me to just mention it in Wednesday's video, which I forgot to do, so I'm mentioning it in this video. Right, that's that out of the way, let's get on. The Interceptor seat, the standard seat that is, there's nothing wrong with it as seats go, but I have to admit, of all the features of this bike, the seat is one thing that for me doesn't quite work. It's a personal preference thing. I'm not a great fan of the diamond quilted design that's stitched or embossed into the seat. Not in this style of seat anyway. And I prefer a flatter, low profile seat. To me, there's something not quite right with that sort of ski ramp that appears at the back of the seat, the way it sort of kicks up. Now I understand why Royal Enfield have done this, but for me personally it doesn't quite work. Now I've heard a lot of complaints about this seat comfort wise. Personally I don't have a problem with it, but a lot of people apparently do. So a few months ago I thought I would kill two birds with one stone. Now like most manufacturers, Royal Enfield do offer a comfort seat version of this seat, or as they call it, a touring seat. But for me it was the aesthetics that was bothering me more than anything else, and the touring seat to all intents and purposes looks the same. But the Continental GT 650 has a very differently shaped seat, and they also do a touring seat for that model. The seat rail and all the fixing points on both bikes are identical, and so obviously the Continental GT seat fits perfectly. So I put my £140 down, it arrived a few days later, and I fitted it towards the end of August. The intention being to put a few miles on it and assess whether or not it is more comfortable than the standard seat. Now obviously the fact that I've changed the style of the seat does muddy the waters a little bit, because the Interceptor seat at the front where the rider sits does appear to be much thicker, so theoretically will be more comfortable. The sportier Continental GT seat of course being much thinner at the front. Now reading the description for these seats from Royal Enfield's website, the only notable difference between the two that they mention is their special 3D, as they call it, webbing or netting that's sandwiched between the seat cover and the seat sponge. Now if you look at a standard seat, on the seat pan underneath there are two holes which I presume are to allow air to escape and to help get rid of moisture. On the standard seat you can clearly see just a normal foam through those holes, whereas on the touring seat you can clearly see this sort of diamond shaped netting. Now there's some very sound science behind this. It might seem counterintuitive, but a very soft seat, although initially feeling very plush and comfortable, doesn't provide a lot of support. It inhibits circulation in your gluteus maximus and the tops of your thighs, so that feeling of comfort dissipates over a fairly short space of time. Your circulation's compromised, so you start to feel numb and uncomfortable, and you feel the need to start wriggling about in your seat or you need to get off for a comfort break. This 3D netting effectively firms the seat up. So whereas the seat may feel a little more solid when you first get on it, it doesn't compromise your circulation in the same way. So you can stay comfortable and ride for longer, or at least that's the science behind it. In practice, comfort is relative. We're all different shapes and sizes, so the same seat will affect different people differently. I found the standard seat okay, it's acceptable. Some people simply find they can't live with it. But either way, I do consider that this touring seat is a sensible upgrade if you're looking for longer distance comfort. It does allow you to stay in the saddle just that little bit longer. Now, the seat itself is very well made. It shares exactly the same seat pan with the standard Interceptor seat. And I would imagine that all the seats in this range, whether they be the touring seats or the standard seats for both the Continental GT and the Interceptor, have the same seat pan. Now, as I said earlier on, the Continental GT seat was an aesthetic change for me rather than anything else. I found that the Interceptor seat, to my eye, just looked a bit too bulky. What has surprised me is the quality of these seats. They're substantially cheaper than most other OEM seats. And I did actually compare these to an OEM Triumph seat, which is almost twice the price, to find that the quality and method of build is very similar. There isn't much difference. I picked the Continental GT seat because it is a much lower profile seat. I know some would argue that it doesn't suit the style of the bike, but for me, when I look at the bike with this seat on, the silhouette is just more pleasing to the eye. The rider's segment of the seat is scooped out, leaving the pillion portion a little bit higher. And this seat does actually have a couple of advantages over the standard Interceptor seat. I know some people complain about the height of these bikes, and some people with shorter legs have looked at options of lowering suspension, etc. Before you do that, this could be the answer. The actual rider's portion of the seat is about ½ an inch to ¾ of an inch lower than the standard Interceptor seat. That doesn't sound like much, but in practice it adds up to quite a lot. The seat's sculpted towards the front, and although at the base it's the same width as the Interceptor seat, the angles at either side are less steep, so this offers even more reach to the ground for the rider's legs. It's an option well worth considering if you do struggle with the height of the Interceptor with its standard seat. The other advantage, which might not be to everyone's taste, but I'm sort of considering it, is the ability to fit the Continental GT seat cowling. These are very customizable bikes, and people like to customize them in different ways. So for those looking to go for the street racer or cafe racer look, the ability to fit that seat cowl could come in very handy. On the whole, for me, this seat has been a worthwhile investment. I can't compare it with the Interceptor touring seat, simply because I don't have one. But comparing it to the standard Interceptor seat, there is a definite improvement in comfort over longer distances. It's not huge, an extra 10 or 20 miles before you start to feel it, but on a long tour that can make all the difference. And to be quite honest, comparing it with the Triumph touring seat or comfort seat and the likes of BMW's comfort seats, there's not a lot in it. It's about as good as you're going to get. There is a possibility that the Interceptor touring seat will provide more comfort for longer. It does, after all, appear to have a much thicker padding. But as far as the labelling on this seat goes, it's a definite improvement on what I had before. Once again, thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have, please leave a like and subscribe to this channel. I will of course be back next week, so until then, ride safely and I'll see you soon.